Hey, what's up guys? Garden here, coming to you guys with the final deck profile of August. So we finally made it to the end of the month, and I thought it would be a nice time to wrap up all of the ride lines that we got from like set 1 and the start decks with Eugene. So I wasn't actually planning on profiling this deck at all recently, but I did want to sort of knock this one out towards the end of the month and kind of wrap up all of the ride lines and next month, we're going to be looking at going into the encounter cards with the Phantom Blaster Dragon and Dragonic Overlord. So I thought that would be a nice way to do it and look at those decks in September. But to wrap August off, we have Eugene. So Eugene, admittedly, I haven't play tested this deck too much, but I did play a little bit along with some friends that really helped me out with constructing this deck. So massive shout out to Jack and Kyle. Those two, I spoke to them for quite a long time the other day, and also just asking questions about, how the build looks and different options to consider and how they felt about the deck. So, yeah. So without further ado, we'll get into the deck, and we'll start with the ride line. So, to take a look at the ride line, we of course have the Eugene ride line, just sticking to the usual that we've been playing before. No changes here. So that is pretty simple. So we'll go into the main deck. We have the 3 additional copies of Eugene, of course, because Persona Riding is still good. 10k to the front row is really good to help us pressure the opponent and make our unit attack just that little bit more stronger. So definitely very nice to have. So 3 extra copies of Eugene. And then we have the 4 copies of Tribash, which is still kicking around. Now I was testing 3 of this, but after the games that I did play with the deck, I definitely felt like I wanted to play the 4, just because having that constant crit pressure to be available, especially with the way I went about this deck, I decided to focus it on a highly crit pressure build. So I wanted the 4 Tribash to enable that and to facilitate the constant crit pressure that you can do with the deck. Also, Tribash is an alternative way that you can soul charge in this deck, since one major difference with the deck is that we're trying to focus on other things that require soul, rather than using Eugene's Soul Blast 5, which is pretty important. It's a different change of mindset that we had in compared to set 1, but we do have some other cards in the deck that do use the soul quite well. So we'll get into those pretty much now. So going into the grade 2s, we have the new support card that came from set 2, which is pretty cool. It's only a rare. Now, I cannot pronounce this guy's name very well. Gibra, we'll just call him. Yeah, it's basically the Brachiosaurus-looking unit. So this card's pretty cool. It says, whilst in rear, if your Vanguard is heavily artillery dust storm Eugene, you can pay the cost of Soul Blast 1, rest this unit. Choose one of your opponent's rear guard, and retire it. So yeah, just retires any rear guard. Pretty nice, pretty easy retire to pull off. And then the second skill, which is pretty cool, is rear guard at the beginning of your battle phase. If your opponent has 1 or less rear guards, you can stand this unit, and it gets 5,000 power till end of turn. So of course the idea is that you're going to be using this with Eugene's rest skill. Rest 2 of your units to pop one of their units. Eugene will get 10k, and then utilize your other retiring skills to basically wipe their field for the most part, or at least get it down to like 1, and then you can re-stand this unit and it gets 5,000 power. So pretty nice, and with an 8k booster, that'll be 23, and then if you're looking at like Persona Rides, or maybe like a front trigger, you're going to be looking like 33,000 power, so pretty nice overall, but the ease of retire from this card is very cool, and yeah, obviously designed to work with Eugene, and it works pretty well. So 4 copies of those. And then of course we have the other 15k beat stick that we were playing from set 1 with the Oshikuni. So yeah, gains 5,000 power if your opponent has 2 or less rear guards when it attacks until the end of the battle. Pretty simple. We just kind of want to focus on making some good numbers, good columns, and basically rushing the opponent when we find a good opportunity to do so. And these extra numbers do help with that. So yeah, 4 copies of the Oshikuni. So going into the grade 1s, we have the 4 Perfect Guard, of course, sticking with these. Pretty standard for every deck, so don't pretty need to talk about those that much. So next we have the next support card that we got from set 2, which is 4 copies of Iduriss. So this card's pretty cool. So act Regard, if your opponent's Regard was retired this turn, you can pay the cost of Counterblast 1 and then perform one of the following. You can either give this unit 10,000 power until end of turn, or you can put this unit into your soul and then choose your opponent's grade 2 or greater Regard and retire it. So yeah, it's another retire outlet, which is nice. So it's kind of like Nigel in that respect, but you might notice that it only has 5k power as well. This is not as bad as it seems. It's pretty good to make numbers with, like any 13k will become 18, and you could also put this behind the Vanguard as well to have a decent attacker, a decent booster there to attack with the Vanguard. But it's also just a nice outlet to just dump Counterblast into, since you could actually make this unit really large, and all of a sudden you just have a really powerful column that your opponent has to deal with. And like I said, with the crits that are going around in the deck, if you pressure your opponent enough, that could be enough pressure to seal the game off if they're at a high damage count. So yeah, the retiring aspect of it, the power threshold is nice, and yeah, it's been great in the deck. You can bounce between 3 and 4 of this, since I was talking about this with one of my friends, and yeah, I feel like you should be playing 3 or 4 at minimum, but I personally prefer the 4, just for the retire, and also the fact that it goes into the soul as well is another way of soul charging, which is pretty cool. So next, another card that Soul Blasts along with the Brachiosaurus that we have is 4 copies of the Kizan. So this card's pretty cool. It's Rearguard Act, so it is an Act skill, so do bear that in mind. So you can use it multiple times. Once per turn, you can Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, choose one of your opponent's Rearguards in the same column as this unit, and retire it. So pretty nice spot removal. Your opponent needs to be pretty careful with where they're placing their units, especially when you have one of these on the field. They need to make sure they're playing around this, but yeah, this card's just a feels good card. It's a way to use your Counterblast and of course your Soul to just spot remove stuff in your opponent's field. And the cool thing as well is that with the grade 1s that we have in the deck, we can actually perform some pretty good early game rush that the opponent might suffer for if they don't deal with it properly. But yeah, we can also use this if they decide to dedicate units to the field and then pop them as of will. Like I said, it is an axe skill, so you can keep this on the field, and then, you know, even though it is a once per turn, you can use it, you know, multiple times throughout the fight. So I feel like this card's got just a little bit more utility to it in terms of, you know, having a useful effect. And that's why I actually decided to play only 3 copies of the next card, which is the Shigamanago. So I decided to only go for 3 of this. This is another card that you could debate playing 3 or 4. I think 3 is fine because since I'm playing the 4 Iduriss and the 4 Tribash, those cards, that's like 8 cards that generate me soul. But it is nice to have the 3 extra copies of this, just so it's another outlet of soul charge, since you are wanting that soul for things like your Kizan and also the Brachiosaurus grade 2. What do I call this guy? Gibra. Yeah, we'll call him Gibra just for short. Makes it a bit easier. So yeah, Gibra and also the Kizan, those use soul, and we have them at 4 copies of each. So that's 8 cards at Soul Blast, so it is nice to have extra outlets of soul charge in the deck to help facilitate their skills, which I think is pretty cool. And also, this is also just a nice rest target that you can use for Eugene and then remove it from the field afterwards, once you've got Eugene's skill ready and going. So yeah, that is it for the grade 1s. So for the triggers, we have obviously a pretty aggressive trigger lineup with the 4 crit from the start deck, and then we have 4 more crit from set 1. So doing the 8 crit build as per usual, just because I want that extra pressure with the crits. And then instead of draws, I decided to go for the front triggers, just because the extra shield value I do find quite nice. It can definitely make guarding a lot easier. However, some of my friends do like playing draws, just because, you know, seeing extra pieces like, you know, extra Eugenes for persona riding and just making sure you're getting pluses going as well is nice. But I think overall it depends on what you feel like having. For me, I quite like the shield value since it doesn't cost as many resources to block an attack. So yeah, it's up to you there, but like I said, for me, I prefer the front triggers, so I decided to go for them. Then last but not least, of course, we have the over trigger for Dragon Empire. Of course, restand your Vanguard. Why not? Of course, we're going to be playing that. And last but not least, we have the 4 Babby Dinosaur for the heal trigger, which is very, very cute. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for the deck. Eugene definitely got some nice support cards from set 2. It is definitely a lot more different in comparison to the set 1 version of the deck. Like I said, you're going to be focusing less so on the Soul Blast 5 effect of Eugene, and you're going to be using your Soul primarily for units like your the Brachiosaur, which I keep forgetting the name of. But yeah, the Kizan grade 1, and also the grade 2 Gibra. Yeah. So those are the priorities when it comes to your soul blasting. Then, of course, you have other cards in the deck that can generate your soul. So you're never going to not use Eugene's skill. You could use it maybe like once or twice, but it's definitely less of a priority. But it can definitely get you some good stuff depending on the day. Like I said, it's a gamble sometimes with Eugene. It's good sometimes, but not all the time. But yeah, I feel like the flow of the deck is good. It's definitely got a lot of early game rush with the grade 1s and the grade 2s. And I think that's one of the strong parts of it. And then once you've got your opponent to a good damage threshold, you can then seal them off with those criticals and crit pressure. So yeah. Anyway, that's going to do it for the deck, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Tell me, guys, what you think about the deck list below. And like I said, next month we're going to be looking at Phantom Blaster Dragon, which I've been playing a lot recently. And I actually quite like the deck, even though it doesn't perform too well in the competitive scene. Once built in a certain way, I feel like it can flow very nicely. So yeah, look forward to Phantom Blaster Dragon for Keta Sanctuary, and of course Dragonic Overlord for Dragon Empire. So yeah, that's going to do it for the deck profile. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. So take care, guys, as always, and this is Guardian285, signing out.